So, this is a video about 2003 Mike Myers classic, The Cat in the Hat. And the state of this movie is observable from so many angles that talking about it any one way alone is effectively useless in retrospect. Good or bad are truly useless descriptors here because, as berated as this movie is in the mainstream, the arguments against it are so ridiculously bland you'd think the writer's favourite food is a plain rice cake. And it's very easy to dismiss those who speak fondly of it as simply being nostalgic. Or insane perhaps. There are those who appreciate the vision but ultimately dismiss it as a generally bad kids movie in a way that feels a bit like a cop-out, an easy way to just say something uncontroversial, as opposed to dissecting the unbridled confusion that is felt when first being exposed to it, which is arguably its most interesting quality, whilst those who have dwelled in the soup of absolute what-the-fuckery that is injected into the movie's veins can only react to its detractors with the same confusion the movie evokes. In a way, the views of the other on either side of the schism is a perfect summary of the movie itself. But I already love this movie, and building a meta-narrative around its reception and legacy is an idea that lives exclusively in the corner of my eye. So let's focus on what's right ahead. 2003 Mike Myers classic, The Cat in the Hat. Anvil is a town claiming to be a city, isolated in a valley, a la Whoville, nestled on the rim of a singular snowflake, or whatever the town in Horton Hears a Who was called. This isolation, seemingly being a steamer for the culture of the locals, is revealed by the limited glimpses into the outside world beyond the valley.
No more big government!
The storefronts on the high streets are adorned with semi-muted block pastel colours, many seemingly not having a name, but instead just indicating their function, as if branding or market competition are concepts that these businesses don't need to consider. The streets are spotless, no sign of dirt or litter. The uniformity of the aesthetic may be appealing to some, such as the residents themselves or those who appreciate the sense of style that the movie maintains. To others, the clockwork functioning and lack of stark individuality highlighted in the copy-paste houses and ever-consistent grass length and car colours and makes may be uncanny. Alex McDowell was the production designer in this movie. He'd go on to work on the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, so I suppose creating sets that strike the balance discussed is just one of his talents. Realising worlds that come across as innocuous or fantastical to the innocent, yet somehow unsettling to the tainted. There's a shot towards the midpoint of the movie that presents a full internal view of the house that most of the movie's set in a Wes Anderson-esque fashion. So, color me somehow both surprised and unsurprised to learn that he was also a consultant on Fantastic Mr. Fox. I drew attention to the lack of names for these shops, but as if to focus the story, we see Humberfloop's real estate. The internals are bustling with set decoration, but the one-note colour scheme helps everything settle nicely into the background as we hear the first kind of in-world voice from Joan, played by Kelly Preston, who you may know from Jack Frost's Sky High and John Travolta's Love Life apparently, dressed in hot pink, standing out significantly in comparison to everything and everyone else in the scene. The faith her boss has in her to host a party borders on non-existent, and the first layer of tension in the movie is formed. If her house is as messy as last time, she's
That's pretty clear, Mr. Humberfloop.
One can very easily deduce that the cause of this mess was her children. Her child. It was Conrad. This kid is a little shit, the embodiment of chaos. None of what we see in his introductory scene was necessary for him to perform the indoor stair luge. It's all theatrics. He empties the contents of 2 bowls, yet only uses 1. He throws a tray of cookies into the hob. 2 shots later, they're crushed on the floor. He doesn't search the drawer for a roll of tape. He drags the drawer out, scatters its contents, and scavenges his prize. A single mouthful of bread and the rest of the slices discarded. It's contempt for order. Order here being represented by Dakota Fanning, otherwise known as Coraline, playing Sally. Oh yeah, Conrad was played by Spencer Breslin, who was in some other films. I guess his acting is acceptable. Sally's day is perfectly structured down to her spontaneity being premeditated, but she also extends her ode to ensuring the punishment of chaos. She ensures her mother that she tried to dissuade Conrad from the indoor stair luge, which isn't something we see, so I'm going to assume she's simply attempting to affirm her standing with authority, i.e. lying. This is something we see later in the film as well. She also reiterates her wish for Conrad to be punished for his actions as she smiles in glee. She enjoys the standing with authority that her absolute conformity grants her, and upon the rapture she would not mourn as she is saved, simply laughing in the faces of those left behind. These children, understandably naive as they are sheltered from the logical endpoints of their philosophies. Conrad's actions would inevitably lead to his own destruction if his mother did not keep on top of that he creates. Sally, upon her highest of horses, focused on receiving validation from and enforcing social hierarchy, is isolating herself from her peers. I choose to believe that these characters are victims of the psychological effect of Anvil's culture, i.e. hyperpop suburbanization madness. I'm trademarking that. And their arcs in the film are related to showing them these endpoints and becoming more well-rounded individuals. However, should movie logic not apply, we have a man who triggers my fight or flight response whenever I see him. Alec Baldwin, playing the antagonist, but given that he wants to send Conrad to military school, arguably appropriately, the ethics of military school notwithstanding, not exactly the villain, this is the second layer of tension. If the house is not clean for Joan's party, she will be and send Conrad to military school. While the opening of the movie has its comedic quirks, the extraness of Humberflube, references to the brawls that break out in Taiwanese parliament, which I don't mean to skim over, that's an insane thing to put in a kids movie, but the absurdity of its inclusion is funny, and if you disagree, fuck you. It's a passable kids movie setup. Dare I say its biggest crime is being original material not found in the book it's adapting. Sinful, I know. But we are not gathered here today to discuss whether this movie has a functioning opening. The kids are now trapped in the house.
Then something went bump. How that bump made them jump.
Conrad goes upstairs, slowly twisting the closet handle. We switch to a view from the inside of the closet as light creeps its way in. He cautiously takes a step through the door and is dragged inside. Sally gets close to investigate. Despite the door now being wide open, the closet is still draped in darkness.
You should have seen the look on your face. It was like you saw a monster.
Mike Myers. He's here now. And no matter where they run, he's always there. The prominent outline where the makeup switches to the fursuit. The nose where I'm never certain if it's actually there or CGI. The four-fingered gloves. The jank-ass bow tie. When the book enters the public domain and we inevitably get a cat-in-the-hat horror movie, little will have to change about this design. It's consistently unsettling. The wheezing and throaty laughs have left their impression on people. That's not the cat in the hat. That's Mike Myers' persona. Perhaps somewhat interestingly, the role was originally intended for Tim Allen, who had said that the character scared him as a kid, and I'm glad that that spirit made it to the final version. Mike Myers is a magical entity. He can teleport, clone himself, open portals, defy gravity, and in general, do stuff. His powers are enablers of his absurdity, and he's here because the kid's relationship with fun is in dire need of repair. The arcs, I mentioned them earlier. The arcs, remember? This is how we're doing it. Comedy skits made absurdist by the powers by which they occur, loosely tied together by a series of and-thens. This is generally not a good structure for a film, and it's definitely a point against this one, but that doesn't mean the contents of the set pieces should just be skimmed over, especially because they're the most standout part. Upon release, The Cat in the Hat was given a PG rating. In a way, it feels like the film is deliberately trying to stretch what you can get away with that and still get that rating. Even if you didn't find some of these jokes funny, there's comedy in the fact that they're in a PG film, particularly those of the more violent nature. It's almost shocking how many direct references to murder there are here.
Alright, Nevins. Time to die.
You genuinely believe that this furry could, and probably has, killed before. The film gets away with saying dirty ho in the same way Shrek gets away with saying I have to save my ass. Unlike the latter, where it's a convenient coincidence for the writers, this movie stops to say dirty ho. There's a boner joke, there is bare ass. It's more than there just being some cheeky jokes in there for the adults. This film should not have gotten the rating it did. And I'm not saying that kids should just be sheltered from the contents of the film. I'm not qualified enough for such sweeping statements. I'm just saying it highlights how arbitrary the system is, and the fact that this is the context in which I'm thinking about it is funny to me. Also, shout out to the joke about Mike Myers having voices in his head vying for dominance.
Let the 12-year-old drive!
There's an almost shitpost energy going on here. The blatant pointlessness of the Paris Hilton cameo resembling a parody of such cameos, even if it's definitely not. The sheer shamelessness of the Universal Studios plug. Not product placement. plug. In a post what's the deal with airline food world, I'm not sure how I feel about the notion of a parody sketch of infomercials, but the sheer derailment of the bit with rising tension and the guy in the sweater who asks all the obvious questions, dropping character every other line, is glorious. A masterpiece of a scene. How do you think they got to the point where they decided to add what just about qualifies as a joke due to the magnitude of non sequitur about Rhode Island license plates? What inspires that decision? Honestly, for every scene with Mike Myers, I feel like I have a top 5 moments for each. I'm not even a particular fan of his, but there's at least one spot on those lists dedicated to some facial expression, the exhausted seething mixed with betrayal as he emerges from the sofa. The death of blind faith when using a fire extinguisher and cupcakes. The hesitant deception of handing a man an oversized pen that requires 2 hands. That's acting, baby. The line delivery helps. This movie isn't as quotable as, say, Shrek. But again, each scene has some delivery of a line that makes it stick with me.
Look, I'm a girl. I'm so excited! Something magical and full of wonder. It's called a contract.
This does extend beyond Mike Myers.
This is where they buried my brother!
But they were obviously banking on this guy to carry the film. Yo, the dog is played by Frank Welker, what the fuck? All 3 screenplay writers had previously worked on Seinfeld. You can question the applicability of experience in dark humour to such an adaptation, but creating comedy and mundanity seems helpful when considering the source material is about trying to have fun on a rainy day. Something that people find less issue with nowadays, but Conrad is grounded, so no video games. I should probably talk about the source material actually, hold on. It's not an uncommon take that adapting the works of Dr. Seuss into a feature-length film is an inherently flawed idea. Many of these stories exist purely for the joy of playing with words more than they do providing a narrative. It's worth noting that 14 of the 61 pages of the original book are dedicated to the things running around flying kites and smashing things, which means the adaptation to the big screen has to change the purpose of the text, which is something director Bo Welch was aware of, and the added narrative is fitting, coming from a twist on a line from the book itself.
It's fun to have fun, but you got to know how.
It's standard practice to bring dialogue over in the process, but it's important to know that this carries the spirit of the book into the film.
Cat should not be here. He should not be about. He should not be here when your mother is out.
Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas prominently featured a narrator who quoted lines from the book, and while there are brief snippets of narration in The Cat in the Hat, the odd character slipping into rhyme serves as a fun reminder of the playful approach to language the book has. I'd even argue that jumping between sketch-styled scenes is in keeping with the style of the book, as it jumps between the cat showing off different tricks he can do. The real contention here comes down to the style of humour, which given Zeus's enjoyment of somewhat dark art and getting around a bit, you know what I'm saying?
Written by a man that cheated on his wife.
I don't feel like he'd disapprove. There's also the fact that this movie brought an end to live-action adaptations of Dr. Seuss books, because only live-action films can be bad. I don't know, all things considered, I don't think it's a quote-unquote bad adaptation. The intro is a fun homage to the book too, reworking the studio logos into the author's style. The music's really nice for this. It's a light, innocent piece that really doesn't convey the mood of the feature, but it's good. The score was composed by David Newman, cousin of Randy Newman, who was dropped from the film because the songs he wrote were, quote, deemed inferior. Newman, the David one, brings a lot of transpositions and transformations to the main motif, which helps to solidify the film's musical identity through a very classical score orchestra. A lot of the pieces here would fit into a Silver Age Disney animation. Again, very unfitting, even if it was good enough to win a BMI Music Award. What the fuck is that? Speaking of awards, the song Fun 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 was nominated for a Worst Song Award, which is ridiculously unfair. There's some really catchy parts, although its use in the film doesn't quite land because they cut the verse about Sally. So the verse about Conrad seems like it's just Cat warning Conrad of the consequences that he has faced for the same thing. I don't know if using a ton of TNT to kill a bug up someone's ass is actually a saying, but damn, I love it. Arguably the most fitting addition to the soundtrack is Smash Mouth's cover of Getting Better, which, if I had a nickel for every time a Nearly Noughts movie starring Mike Myers featuring Smash Mouth covered a song from the 60s. Not a lot. Weird twice. Probably should address some actual flaws here in case I'm coming across as too biased. Before the cat shows up, Joan says she wishes Conrad had a different mum, and with no evident arc, she changes her mind to saying that he's a good kid. Which, Conrad may have undergone some change. Maybe we haven't seen if he's gonna properly internalize his arc, but she doesn't know that. He's still a little shit as far as she's concerned, so this nice moment rings really hollow. Similarly, Sally tells him that he's a good brother, and
What's he done for you in this movie? Sacrifice you to a tornado? The attempts to be wholesome don't really mesh with the energy of the film is what I'm saying. It's laughable. Like, again, I actually find it funny that they tried to pull this given the contents of the film. Naturally, the CGI is dated. The character of the fish is kind of funny in that while he's supposed to provide some balance to the cat, his place in the dynamic of the main cast is that he is ignored. The second half is mostly focused on catching a runaway dog, and they bring a fish along for this, and it's like, why? But taking the silly little cartoon drawing of a fish and making it 3D model is quite displeasing. The mother of all messes is a concept that I like. The world Mike Myers comes from is effectively diseased by the aura of unadulterated fun, and this disease wants to spread. God, I can't believe Kamen Rider Gaim took influence from this movie. The mess is purely contained within the house. Even when they open the door, the view from inside the walls seems endless. But from the inside, the house seems the same as any other. The floors, walls, and furniture are twisted and warped into some things and others. And the most effective form of transportation is an amusement park ride. You know, like the ones at Universal Studios. I like the signs of life, birds with books for wings, which I choose to believe are these paintings we see earlier. There's also these trees that look like truffle trees. I wanted to believe they came from the wallpaper, but the wallpaper still has flowers, so maybe not. The houseplant next to the door stays intact too, which is nice, I guess. But again, the CG used in the presentation is indeed dated. Well, I don't think it would have fit into the film. I kind of would have liked to have seen more of this sort of thing. Not enough to play the PS2 game though. Maybe there would have been more in the cancelled sequel. We're approaching the end here, so I'm just going to quickly list off some of the other things I really like. Conrad's clothes resembling the Lorax, that's cute. Mrs. Kwan, absolute icon. The fact that Spencer Breslin clearly doesn't know what to do with his hands while he's telling Mike Myers off. Thing 1, respecting Chocolate Thunder's chosen name. Mike Myers' lawyers teleporting, which means either Mike Myers can teleport other people too, or they really are magical time-traveling elves. The movie puts Alec Baldwin through the pain of being born. Several jokes I didn't mention. The fact that they wanted to make Ferris Bueller's Day Off for kids, but people instead compared it to Freddy Got Fingered. The wars that have been waged in the genre voting for this movie on Rate Your Music. Like, it was considered a snuff film at one point. People got banned from genre voting for trying to get it labelled as a home invasion movie. Look, I don't know how stuff like this works. I'm preaching to the choir here. I don't need to tell you that the slightly uncanny costume work, the shock of the massive strain on the age rating, and the absurd and dumb comedy mixed with some genuinely funny deliveries gives the Cat in the Hat a bizarre charm. I don't need to tell you that the set design is actually cool, and the score is good. I don't need to tell you that the undeserved attempt at being wholesome, the elements that age this movie make you laugh at the movie instead of with it at times. But I occasionally fixate on the Cat in the Hat. I spiral on it. I watch it back and wish I could get to the core of what makes the Cupcakeinator scene so masterful. When I describe why I like this movie in conversation, I've said that it's because it's just Mike Myers' persona being a menace to some kids for an hour. It's not surprising that there are people who have built up a somewhat convincing argument that this is a demonic creature. Dude straight up rips the brake out of a car for a bit, and he does nothing to help close the crate at the end. He wants the disease to spread. I watched the reviews that don't quite hit the spot of why I like this movie, so now I'm here saying the same shit everyone else does in a different order, trying to externalize these feelings in hopes that I'll be exercised of this movie, that it'll haunt me no longer. The combination of the good, the bad, and the ugly really make the Cat in the Hat genuinely fascinating. My mind flickers on it being so bad it's good and being actually good just with the wrong demographic. I love it.